Before starting this video, I do want to give a thank you to my patrons that support the channel. And if you would like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you in the link down below. So with that, let's get into today's video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on Pub Stomp MTG. So I can't tell you how excited I am for this set, mainly because dinosaurs are coming back, whether it's in the form of Lost Caverns of Ixalan or also the new Jurassic World Universes Beyond set. Again, I'm a big Jurassic Park fan. I wore my Jurassic Park shirt just for this occasion, and also I do have my poster in the background. So again, I'm a very big Jurassic Park fan. I see it about every single year. Usually I'll rewatch all the series, and that it does include the Jurassic World series, because I know not a lot of people are a big fan of it, but I actually do like the first one, and the new dinosaurs that they did put in there are pretty sweet too. They're not as great as the original, at least in my opinion, but I do enjoy the other ones. It's kind of like how people love the original trilogy of Star Wars, but kind of either like or dislike the prequels. I'm more of a big prequel fan, by the way. But anyways, aside from that rant, I'm very excited to talk about this set and talk about these two specific commanders. So we do have Owen, Grady, Raptor Trainer, and Blue, Loyal Raptor. So these are partners together as teamer commanders. So very awesome that we do get a partner setup. I do believe I predicted that in a previous video that we'd get a partner matchup with Owen and Blue. So I'm glad to see I was correct on that part, but let's first read what they do. So first of all, Owen Grady, the Raptor Trainer, does read for 1 red and a green. It does partner with Blue. You could also tap and put a choice of a Menace, Trample, Reach, or Haste counter on a target dinosaur, only activate as a sorcery. So that is very fitting because he is training Raptors, so he's training them with all sorts of specialties, whether you're giving them Haste, Reach. Interesting with the Reach, by the way, because they're not really reaching, but Menace and Trample, obviously very fitting, especially with Menace, because Raptors are Menace in the whole entire trilogy of the first one, and I guess in a little bit of the second one. I feel like they're not as menacing in the Jurassic World series compared to the first trilogy. Aside from that, Blue Loyal Raptor, let's read what she does. So for 2 green and a blue, it does have partner with Owen Grady, and for each kind of counter on Blue Loyal Raptor, each other dinosaur you control enters the battlefield with a counter of that kind on it. So this is very flavorful for many aspects. Owen is teaching Blue how to do different activities, whether it's being a menace, also giving Trample, Reach, or Haste. So it does give your dinosaurs 4 different abilities, and Blue will pass on her knowledge to other dinosaurs. Again, I do like what these two are doing. They're giving each other counters so that you can give the rest of your dinosaurs counters. So honestly, this is a really cool pairing. At first I was kind of like, it's okay, but the more I read into it, the more options I did think about. This is a very cool printing. So to kind of give you an overview of this video, I do want to talk about some dinosaurs you may want to put in this deck. Also some of the new Jurassic World cards in this set, because I do want to make this as flavorful as possible so that you can put all the Jurassic World cards you can in here. That does exclude the Indominus Rex because it is in Sultai colors and not in Teamer colors. So unfortunately, that is not there, but there's a lot of cool options you can do in Teamer colors. One of my favorite color combinations for big creatures, and this is obviously no exception, so let's dive into it. So first of all, I do want to focus on counters, because for each kind of counter on Blue Loyal Raptor, each other dinosaur you control enters the battlefield with those counters on them. So it's not just the counters that Owen Grady does give to Blue, there's a lot of other ways we could put counters on Blue. For example, we could put a hexproof counter on Blue by using Slippery Bog Bonder. For 3 and a green, it does have flash and hexproof. When it does enter the battlefield, you put a hexproof counter on a target creature, then move any number of counters from among creatures you control onto that creature. So of course, if we do have Blue on the battlefield, and say for example we do also have like 3 other dinosaurs with 3/1/1 counters on each of them on the battlefield too, when Slippery Bog Bonder enters the battlefield, we could put a hexproof counter on Blue and move all those counters from all those dinosaurs onto Blue too. And now moving forward, with your dinosaurs entering the battlefield, they will get 9/1/1 counters on them, and plus a hexproof counter because of Blue's ability. I'll tell you what, even though Slippery Bog Bonder isn't a dinosaur, it's very powerful in this deck so that we can move around counters and put them on Blue so that we can make all the other dinosaurs that enter the battlefield even bigger. But if we do want to put a double strike counter on Blue so that we can put double strike counters on each of our dinosaurs, we could use Spectacular Showdown for 1 and a red, put a double strike counter on target creature, then goad each creature that has double strike counter put on this way. So a lot of people may use this to goad other creatures that opponents control so that they don't attack themselves, but however, if you just put a double strike counter on blue, all the dinosaurs that enter the battlefield for now on will have a double strike counter put on them. And I'll tell you what, you don't want to mess with a Galta that has double strike being a 12/12 body. Aside from that, I did also want to talk about some other counter synergies by talking about the Ozolith. Both versions, Ozolith, the Shattered Spire, and also the original Ozolith. With the Ozolith Shattered Spire, it's very good because if one or more 1/1 counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many plus 1/1 counters are put instead. Also, you have that ability of paying 1 and a green and tapping it, put a 1/1 counter on target artifact or creature you control, only activating only as a sorcery. Plus, it does have cycling, so it does have that utility. If you don't really need the Ozolith, you could just cycle it away. Plus, if someone does decide to remove blue from the battlefield, you could easily put all those counters on blue onto the original Ozolith. So later on, if you do recast blue, you could put all those counters back on blue so that nothing ever happened. Aside from that, dinosaurs are huge. That's why you must include the Great Henge. I know it's a little expensive. It did get reprinted twice with Lord of the Rings and then the Commander Master set, so it did knock down its price a little bit, but this is a very good card in the deck because this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Say for example you have a Galta on the battlefield, this will basically just cost 2 green, and it basically replaces itself because you can tap it to add 2 green and gain 2 life. Plus, this is a very good card draw outlet. When a creature enters the battlefield, you'll put a 1/1 counter on it on top of drawing a card. So again, this is a very great value engine, ramping you ahead, and on top of that giving you card draw and putting 1/1 counters on all your creatures, including blue, so that you can put an additional 1/1 counter on all your dinosaurs that enter the battlefield. Aside from that, I do want to talk about a very underutilized card, and that's Uncivil Unrest. For 4 and a red, non-token creatures you control have Riot, so they enter the battlefield with your choice of a 1/1 counter or haste. Also, if a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals double that in damage instead. Okay, seriously, this is quite an insane card in this deck because we do have a lot of big creatures, and putting 1/1 counters on them with Riot is very easy to do. Plus, we do have multiple ways of giving our dinosaurs haste. Say, for example, if we do have Owen on the battlefield, we could give a haste counter to one of our dinosaurs that enter the battlefield. Or even if blue does have a haste counter on it, all our dinosaurs that enter the battlefield will give a haste counter on them too. So again, I'm going to use the example of Galta because that's the biggest creature in this deck. Say for example, you put it onto the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on it, it's a 13/13, and when you deal combat damage to a player, it's going to deal 26 damage to a player. So seriously, I think this card is great, definitely worthy to include in the deck. But of course, I do want to talk about dinosaurs in this deck because we do want to play a lot of dinosaurs so that we could get that ability of putting more counters on them with blue or with Owen. So for example, I do want to mention the Skull Spore Nexus. This is not necessarily a dinosaur, but it's a dinosaur token generator. Very similar to the Great Henge, this spell will cost X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, you create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness, each equal to the power total of those creatures. So again, using Galta as an example, if your Galta does die, you will make a 12/12 fungus dinosaur creature token on the battlefield. And note with blue's ability, it's any kind of dinosaur that enters the battlefield, whether it's a token or a non-token, each will trigger a dinosaur, and you'll put counters on them. Plus, this is another way where we could pay 2 and tapping and double target creature's power until end of turn, so this does a lot for us. We can make tokens, we could also make them even bigger by doubling their power. This is an absolute slam dunk in the deck, no question about it. Other cards I do want to talk about is both versions of Etali, whether you're talking about Etali Primal Conqueror or Etali Primal Storm. Both of these are quite insane in Commander games. I do have a version of Etali Primal Conqueror as a deck tech if you do want to go check it out, but I do like both of these in the deck mainly because they have those incredible abilities. Etali Primal Conqueror does have that ability when it enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among those non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. Etali Primal Storm is very similar, but in the form of attack trigger, and you could whiff on lands possibly. So of course, a lot of people have been talking about these cards, so I don't want to talk about them too much in this video. They're very good cards in the deck, no question about it. We do also have 2 different versions of Galta in this deck, Galta Primal Hunger and Galta Stampede Tyrant. With Galta Primal Hunger, it'll be reduced based off of the total power of creatures you do control. Say for example, you have 10 power on the board, this will just cost 2 mana for a 12/12 with Trample. removal. And Galta Stampede Tyrant might be one of the best cards in the deck because it does have that insane enter the battlefield trigger, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield directly. So say for example we do cast this and we do have like 5 dinosaurs in our hand, we could easily just put all of them onto the battlefield directly because of Galta Stampede Tyrant. And if blue does have a haste counter and even a trample counter, that could spell GG for a lot of different opponents on the battlefield, as we could swing away with our big giant dinosaur army. Aside from that, I'm very excited for the fact that instead of being Naya colors, we are in Temur colors. So for example, we can play Nezahal Primal Tide. This is quite the insane card because for 7 mana, the spell can't be countered, you have no maximum hand size. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you draw cards. So very similar to Ristic Study, but they can't pay the 1, you automatically will draw the card. You discard 3 cards, exile Nezahal Primal Tide, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of next end step. So yeah, this is just a removal magnet, but if you do have a lot of cards in your hand, you could easily just discard 3 cards and then just tuck it away, and even if somebody casts a board wipe, you could just tuck it away too. Plus, whenever they're trying to remove Nezahal, you are drawing a card based off of whether they're casting a non-creature spell or not. So again, a very insane card, and I love it so much that we get to put this in a Dinosaur Tribal deck. I will say the new Velociraptor pre-constructed deck did give us some exciting new dinosaurs to play around with Scion of Calamity, Curious Altasaur, and Sunfrill Imitator. I personally think Scion of Calamity is going to be absolutely nuts in this deck because of that Myriad ability. Say for example, blue has a haste, menace, and a trample counter on it. You can then go ahead and put Scion of Calamity on the battlefield and it will have haste, trample, and menace. You can swing in with Scion of Calamity having that Myriad trigger. Because of blue's ability, they will enter the battlefield with a menace and trample and a haste counter. You don't really need haste in that situation, but menace and trample, you have that evasion, and you can have a for sure way of dealing combat damage to a player so that you can destroy their target artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. So for me personally, I feel like Scion of Calamity is going to be nuts in this deck because of blue's ability to put counters on it. I will say it's very nice to see Curious Altasaur having that way of getting some extra card draw. Say for example you have 5 dinosaurs on the battlefield and you connect to a player, you'll draw 5 cards off of that. Plus it does have a 2/5 body with Vigilance and Reach. You can swing in, still keep that Vigilance, and then so you can block later on. This is absolutely going to go in any dinosaur deck that I make from now on. However, out of all the cards that I found pretty interesting in this deck, I feel like Sunfrill Imitator could be very useful because it has that ability when it does attack, you may have it become a copy of another target dinosaur you control, except its name is Sunfrill Imitator and has this ability. So this could copy your best creature on the battlefield. Say for example you copy a Curious Altasaur, you have 2 of those triggers going on. Depending on how much dinosaurs you do swing in, the more card draw you are going to get. Or even if you want to copy blue, say for example blue has 5/1/1 counters on it, then Sunfrill Imitator enters the battlefield. Sunfrill Imitator will get 5/1/1 counters on it too. And let's dive down in that scenario. Say for example you swing in with a Sunfrill Imitator, then you make a copy of blue having 2 blues on the battlefield with 5/1/1 counters on them. Then when you do cast your next dinosaur spell, instead of 5/1/1 counters based off of that original blue, you're going to put 10/1/1 counters based off of both of those blues on the battlefield. So I do love these cards mainly for their utility. Scion of Calamity with that removal, also with the card draw with the Altasaur, and kind of copying your commander, doing some shenanigans with the Sunfrill. I also do really like Scytheclaw Raptor, mainly because it has that ability whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, Scytheclaw Raptor deals 4 damage to them. That will happen to us too because it's whenever a player, so that includes us too. This card absolutely punishes those who try to play tempo, that try to play spells on other people's turns. So this is one to definitely keep your eye out on. But the next card I do want to talk about does have some versatility with Trumpeting Carnosaur. To me this does look like the Carcharodontosaurus. And yes, that is a real dinosaur, and yes, it's a very cool dinosaur, go look it up. But aside from that, this is 6 mana for a 7/6. That by itself is pretty good with trample. Also when it does enter the battlefield, you discover 5. Also it does have the ability to pay 2 and a red, discard Trumpeting Carnosaur. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. I know 3 mana to deal 3 damage to a target creature or planeswalker isn't the best, but remember, it's an ability. It's not by casting the spell, so this will avoid counter spells. Not the creature, unfortunately. It does have that Discover 5 mechanic, which basically cascades into something with converted mana cost 5 or less. So for me personally, I feel like this is a very versatile card. Not the most powerful one, but utility of having removal and putting a big body on the battlefield. Aside from that, we did talk about dinosaurs from Ixalan. Let's now talk about dinosaurs from Jurassic World. I basically put all the good cards from the Jurassic World set into this deck list. And the first card I do want to bring your attention to is Welcome to Jurassic Park. I'll tell you what, just for 3 mana, this is very powerful for a saga. It has that first lore chapter of making a target non-artifact creature into a 0/4 wall artifact creature with Defender. Then for the second lore chapter, you make a 3/3 dinosaur creature token on the battlefield with haste, and then you destroy all walls, including that wall you just made. And it does flip into Jurassic Park. This is pretty insane. It has that ability to give your dinosaurs escape in the graveyard, and you can tap it to add a green mana for each dinosaur you control, so basically a Gaia's Cradle for dinosaurs. So yeah, to me this is just a no-brainer in the deck. And the next card, I will say I'm a little salty that it's not legendary, but we do have Ravenous Tyrannosaurus. So the reason why I'm pretty salty about this not being a legendary is the fact that it was in 4 of the 6 Jurassic franchise films. And I'm talking about this specific T-Rex. It was in the first film, the 4th, 5th, and the 6th film too. I better get off my soapbox before I go too into it. So this does have a great ability, Devour 3. So say for example you have like 4 tokens on the battlefield and you sacrifice them all to the Devour ability. Ravenous Tyrannosaurus will enter the battlefield with 12 1/1 counters on it, making it an 18/18. Plus it does have the ability when it does attack, it deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 other target creature. Excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So let's go to that example where Ravenous Tyrannosaurus is an 18/18 on the battlefield. You swing in, somebody chump blocks it with a 1/1. Ravenous Tyrannosaurus will kill that opponent's creature, and on top of that deal excess damage to that player too, so 17 damage essentially. So in a weird way it reads Trample but does not read Trample too, because if you do give this Trample based off of Blue's ability, you'll deal 17 damage to that player, and on top of that deal that 17 excess damage to that player too. So yeah, that's a whole lot of damage just for 1 dinosaur. Also, I do want to talk about a very interesting card with Savage Order. So for 2 and 2 green, as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature with power 4 or greater, you search your library for a dinosaur creature card and put it onto the battlefield, and it gains indestructible until your next turn. So for sure this is going to be an absolute staple in any dinosaur deck. 4 power is not going to be a big deal because you have a lot of 4 power in your deck with dinosaurs in general. So aside from the power level of the card, I do have a little personal story with this scene specifically. If you don't care to hear the story, you could just skip to this point now. So I was roughly around 5 years old when the 3rd Jurassic Park movie came out, and I was a huge T-Rex fan. So of course I was very excited to go see the movie, and my mom and dad took me to go see it. So as the movie was going along, we saw the Spinosaurus, they had the chase scene, and then later on we get to see the T-Rex there, and I was super excited to see it. So as you probably know how the movie goes, the Spinosaurus does fight the T-Rex, and the Spinosaurus essentially snapped its neck. If you ask my parents what's the most traumatizing moment of my entire life, that is it in that movie theater when that Spinosaurus snapped that T-Rex's neck. I was crying that the T-Rex died, and then my dad leaned over to me saying, "Hey, he just put him to sleep, he's just sleeping right now." So as a 5-year-old at the time, I just believed my dad and said, "Okay, he's asleep, he's not dead," and then continue on for the rest of the movie, not even phased anymore. So yeah, that's just a little summary of what happened as a child when the Spinosaurus killed the T-Rex in this card image. Alright, now story time over, let's go on, let's move on to the next card. So this next card is very powerful. We do have the Cresting Mosasaurus. So for 6 and 2 blue, it does have Emerge for 6 and a blue, which the Emerge ability is pretty flavorful with the Cresting Mosasaurus clearly shown on the image. It emerges out of the water to eat its tasty snack. Aside from that, it does have a pretty powerful ETB when it enters the battlefield, and if you cast it, return each non-dinosaur creature to its owner's hand, so basically a whelming wave for dinosaurs. So yeah, if your opponents aren't playing any dinosaurs, it's going to be open season for your dinosaurs to swing in for damage. Speaking of which, we do also have a clever girl. And trust me, these Velociraptors mean business with the Hunting Velociraptor. So for 2 and a red, it does have First Strike. Dinosaur spells you cast have Prowl 2 and a red. So Prowl is a new ability. You may cast a spell with its Prowl cost if you deal combat damage to a player this turn with a creature with any of its creature types. So instead of casting, for example, a Mosasaurus for 8 total mana, you could just cast it for 2 and a red as long as you deal damage with a dinosaur this turn. Of course, that's just one example. There's a lot of other examples where you could reduce the mana cost of your big chunky dinosaurs just to 3 mana. This is an insane card value engine when you're casting dinosaurs. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Owen, Grady, Raptor Trainer, and Blue Loyal Raptor. For such a long time, I wanted dinosaurs outside of the Naya color combination, and no, I'm not counting the Ikoria dinosaurs because they're kind of mutated dinosaurs, so I don't really count them in general. So it is amazing to see different dinosaurs reaching outside of the typical Naya color combination. And for me personally, I'm digging this color combination of Teamer, mainly having that ability to put counters on your dinosaurs, or even blue, so that blue, when they enter the battlefield with other dinosaurs, blue will just teach them those counters too. But let me know down below in the comments, what do you think of this partner combination? Do you feel like Teamer Colors is the right way to go? For me personally, I'm most excited for this commander combination the most out of all the other commanders that I've seen for Jurassic Park and Jurassic World combined. So with that said, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.